Evo Minion Horde in a nutshell. Minion Horde will be the next evolution. Yes, evolutions are coming back to Clash Royale. You can find them in the Diamond Pass as a choice, which if you're gonna be buying, I'd appreciate you using code Abdod to help support the channel. You might think that just by seeing the card cross the bridge, you understand what exactly it does, because it looks pretty simple, but honestly, there is more to it. Now, first things first, this ability triggers at any amount of damage, so zapping them triggers it, and damage as little as Goblin Curse should also do the same thing. But if the damage is enough to kill the minions, then you basically won't get your ability at all, as opposed to something like Evo Skeleton Barrel dropping both nukes even when it gets one shot. Becoming invisible doesn't really cut it, cause most of the counters are just spells. And we all know invisible targets can get killed by spells, so what's the point of that Evo, you might ask? Well, they also become invincible, as in it's impossible to damage them at all during their invisibility. Splash attacks on the card around them would have no effect on them at all as long as the ability is active. Using two small spells on them is also a waste, because the second spell will just do nothing. And yes, that means that it will survive arrows because it's 3 waves of damage instead of one big burst of damage. The nice part is that while immune, they get in a nerfed state that slows them down to make them less annoying to deal with. And this slow state does apply to attack speed as well, it's not just movement speed. Here's a funny thing I discovered. Apparently, hitting them twice in the same frame would make both attacks apply. If you're thinking, how the hell am I gonna get this hand in a real game? Don't worry, I'm already ahead of you. Theoretically speaking, you could time a zap and a rage, or a zap and a snowball, or whatever, but it really is hard to pull off. I don't even know if future me is gonna bother trying, or if the footage above this line is gonna be just a bunch of failed attempts. Like, to put things into perspective, even having 2 princesses on the board which have the same attack speed and projectile speed doesn't work because the distance between them isn't the same. It has to be picture perfect mirrored. It took me so many attempts, but I ended up finding a possible method. There are 2 reasons I'm mentioning this. Reason 1 is to make sure you don't think the game is bugged when something like this happens, and reason number 2 is that some extremely niche situations like Ewiz plus Zap make it somewhat useful in a real game. Regarding slowing them down, the slow effect doesn't stack. I have no way of visualizing this clearly, but since their slow is stronger than the Ice Wiz, that means the Ice Wiz slow doesn't really add anything when used. Hero Ice Golem works fine against them. Yes, the slow won't help much, but it distracts them and the freeze would stall them long enough. Honestly, countering it when it's on your side isn't really that hard. Like, something as small as a snowball can ruin the whole thing if you used it early. Like, sure, if you're playing melee cards for defense, then maybe a snowball isn't really that effective because they will chip on your stuff while invincible. But with ranged cards or buildings, they will be back to their vulnerable state before they get in range of certain stuff. Freeze lasts longer than their invincibility, so it cancels it out and brings their HP low enough to where a baby dragon would be able to one-shot them. While the Executioner can technically one-shot Minion Horde because of his returning axe, against the Evo, it just wouldn't work and you will end up losing the interaction entirely. If it's an evolved Executioner, placing him close can make him one-shot them, so try to sync your Evo cycle with the opponent. Monk is another example of a card that used to be able to deal with Minion Horde, but no longer can after the Evo. Goblinstein kinda the same as Monk, it doesn't deal damage for long enough duration to be able to kill them entirely. Overall, your only solution is either things that one-shot them or activating their ability on the bridge while nothing is in their sight. What's funny is that even though Wizard is like an insane counter to this Evo, having Hero Wizard using his ability has a slight chance at ruining it because of the NATO damage, so watch out. Firecracker can take them all out because the fireworks all split at the same frame, so multiple hits are counted as one here. Though if it didn't directly target them, then it will only splash some of the damage on them, triggering their ability. Hero Knight's Taunt is a rare case of something that can abuse their slow movement speed, twist their invincible frames, and make killing them easier. It's gonna mostly be hard to counter it when it's on their side because it doesn't matter what the push you have is, it'll just end up dying. Now, I'm not saying don't spell them when attacking because it still reduces the DPS, and you eventually want to deal with them anyway, especially since in some scenarios, double spelling them can be worth it if you had to delay the second spell. But what I'm trying to say is, don't overcommit offensively when they have them in hand. Treat them the same way you treat the hyper defensive evos like Mega Knight for example. Using them will boil down to baiting out spells than playing them, which is similar to regular Minion Horde. Although they are now safer to play on more stuff, I guess that's still a bad grade, but it's an option. If you were in a really bad spot and you had no elixir to tank for them, they can still be functional if you are fine giving up the counter push. Splitting them in the back might be a viable play because the ability is applied on each minion individually, especially since even only 2 minions are gonna be a huge threat on the enemy tower when evolved compared to how they get only like 2 hits when unevolved. Unless they have cannoneers, then I guess screw that strategy, it wouldn't really work. Because the opponents are gonna look for ways to one-shot them, I think it might become a fireball bait card. That means I can see new decks start using them, so maybe 3 Musketeers deck would play them instead of mortar bait decks. For King Tower activations, their regular Minion Horde can be activated with if you kite them towards the middle and tornado them, but you will take a bunch of damage. The Evo version is harder to kite because of the way they get hit one by one, which slows them down and makes them harder to pull. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible because it can be done, but the thing is, the timing is much more different that you have to learn it all over again. Here are these sound effects. When testing the Evo Minion Horde, I low-key played with someone from the Balance team, and okay, it's kind of funny. I deadass just played Hyper Bait against him for one of the games, and it was a hard counter. I used like 0 brain cells, and it was like, it felt like I was bullying him. Low-key, I kind of feel bad, but I hope it makes him nerf Hyper Bait even more, my dudes.